Robert Costa is a national political reporter at the Washington Post, and he also co-authored the Post story about the conversation. All right, so this is what Trump tweeted about your report about 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time this morning. He came out with it and said, "Totally false reporting on my call with Reince Priebus. He called me 10 minutes, said I hit a nerve, doing well, end." All right, so here's your chance now to reply to Mr. Trump and that false reporting in his words.
Well, it was not false reporting. I actually just got off the phone with Mr. Trump. We spoke for about 30 minutes. On the record, he talked about his view of the call. He said that Chairman Priebus did ask him to tone down his comments on immigration, which many party leaders see as inflammatory. He said his dispute was on the timing of the call. He said, as you reported, for about 10 to 15 minutes. The donors who I had spoken to, who had been briefed on the call close to Priebus, they said it was about nearly an hour, 45 minutes. So that's the dispute. But it's not in dispute that Chairman Priebus did ask Donald Trump to soften his tone and to speak in a more measured way.
Well, the account of what actually happened and what was talked about in that phone conversation was one thing, but then that comes after, NBC's Katie Tur in that interview with Donald Trump. He said that he had nothing to apologize for. Also, that if nominated, he was convinced. He said it, "I'm going to win the Latino vote." So do you get the sense that these kinds of remarks are helping or hurting his ability to last until at least the first debate next month? And you consider here how well he's doing in the polls in New Hampshire and nationally.
Mr. Trump told me a few minutes ago that he views his rhetoric as something that's connecting with the Republican base, be it on immigration or other issues. He attributes his rise in the polls to his ability to speak bluntly, to clash with party leaders at times, and to not be politically correct. At the same time, many party leaders are worried that he's going to be perhaps a problem on the debate stage in the sense that his outsized personality could overwhelm the rest of the field. Mr. Trump also told me a few minutes ago that he's not ruling out a third party or independent bid for president should he fail to win the Republican nomination. He said he would like to win the Republican nomination. That's his #1 goal. But he's going to wait to see who becomes the Republican nominee and then choose whether to support them. Okay,
but when it comes to the GOP and the jitters that they may have from Donald Trump and his take on immigration and other issues, let me play you what another GOP candidate said Wednesday about Trump. This is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
My party is in a hole with Hispanics. The first rule of politics when you're in a hole is stop digging. Somebody needs to take the shovel out of Donald Trump's hands.
Okay, so if no one's going to take the shovel out, at least for now, why the nervousness by the GOP? Why the jitters?
Well, they look at how the party appealed to Hispanics in 2012, and they see a lot of room to grow. They think that the party could do a better job in reaching out to Hispanic voters, and they think that tone is part of that conversation and broadening the party's appeal. That's why Priebus reached out to Trump. They want to make sure that they have a coalition for the future that includes millennials, young voters, Hispanics, a whole different part of America that's not just the traditional Republican base. That's why Trump's comments have alarmed some quarters of the GOP, while some activists are cheering him.
And then you have the parallels drawn here. I want to read you something that Karl Rove wrote in the Wall Street Journal about Donald Trump. He writes, Mr. Trump could become the 2016 version of Missouri Representative Todd Akin, who tarnished the GOP brand in 2012 with an offensive statement about rape. Republican leaders from Mitt Romney and down immediately condemned his words, but swing voters were persuaded that every Republican believed what Mr. Akin said. So do you think that he could be a Todd Akin now?
It was a key question on my mind as well when I spoke to Mr. Trump. I said, are you going to stay in this race through early next year? Is this a summer fling in terms of your candidacy, or is this something you really want to fight on? He said he's going to fight on. He said he's going to continue to make hires. He framed his campaign as a serious one and one that will continue for months. That means for the Republican Party, this is something that may not just fade away. His candidacy may be here to stay.
And I want to ask you, as you were wrapping up that conversation you just had with Donald Trump, what mood was he in with you? Because you know what happens when anybody challenges him. He gets combative, he gets defensive. Was he that way with you? How was that tone?
Mr. Trump and I have known each other professionally for many years. I've conducted interviews with him several times, and it was a professional rapport. It was one where he wanted to make sure his dispute, what he viewed as a clarification of the length of the call, was made clear to the Washington Post. At the same time, he wanted to give his view, and he said that Priebus did ask him to tone it down, but he's not going to tone it down. In fact, he's going to go to Arizona and Nevada this weekend to talk about illegal immigration. That's not a retreat.
All right. Robert Costa from the Washington Post, thank you for the update. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.